night. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Horrornightoasis, a radio show where we discuss all the latest movies and news from the world of horror. Joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Ian. Ian, are you there?
I am.
How have you been, sir?
Oh, About all I can say right now.
Yeah, no, it's perfectly understandable, But we are here, and we are going to finish our Savage Nursery marathon. It has been an interesting, and we always say that, marathon, and what a way to conclude it with a film that harkens back to the first thing we watched. But
Right.
nonetheless, it is time to finally delve deep into Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. And when we reviewed the first one, we were kind of in the minority of enjoying that film because we kind of saw its flaws but looked past it, still acknowledged them, but we're optimistic. And I think, again, in the minority of finding some entertainment out of Winnie the Pooh. And we were looking forward to where the sequel would eventually lead. And here we are. And I got to say, I'm about right around the same as I was with the first film. But we'll get into that when we get into the review section. So let's get into the film itself. So first thing first is that the very first film, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, is a movie within Blood and Honey 2. It's a Hollywood mainstream movie based off the events of Christopher Robin and the 100 Acre Wood Massacre. And so we're introduced, we have another animated opening talking about Christopher Robin and Pooh and the animals of the 100 Acre Wood. And Christopher, basically, something happened. We'll get into it. But he wanted to become a doctor. And, Pooh's still doing his thing in the wood. And they kind of converge in a sense. And just basically, Christopher Robin, there's history of the town because of something that happened, and all the people think, it revolves around him, and he caused it. And he's, again, the backstory gives you a little bit of stuff and doesn't really do too much. But basically now we follow Christopher Robin. He's a nurse in the hospital, and he's trying to help people. He lives with his mom and dad. He has a sister. He used to have a younger brother. Something happened. He's seeing a psychiatrist because he's having these. He doesn't really know how to see oneself in a sense. And he's like, he has this history of this party that happened and something that happened to his brother. And like they're doing these tests, trying to get him to dream, trying to see what he sees, to get it out there. And at the same time, we have Pooh along with Piglet, and now we are introduced to Al and Tigger. Tigger is sort of under wraps, but Al is sort of like the oracle in a sense, where like he's like the gatekeeper of everything. He's sort of the way he talks. I mean, it's very Pinhead Hellraiser vibes, and the way he looks too.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll get into Tigger and the way he is. There's a lot of references to, well, I wouldn't say references, I say like nods to other more notable horror villains, especially Tigger. I mean, we'll get into that. And so basically, Christopher Robin is trying to live his life, basically, and the townsfolk doesn't kind of want to let it go. But there's also this history of these kids that are disappearing. That of course everyone is blaming Christopher. He has this girl that he sees called Lexi. Again, just a lot of characters. It's very plot driven this time around, which we'll get into. And I'm trying to be good because again, like the last time, it's not officially out per se, so a lot of people can't see it. So I'm trying to be more non-spoilery in my assertion of the review. But not either or. The people are trying to hunt down Pooh in the woods, and they're trying to put an end to it in a sense, and going into the woods and stopping Pooh and friends, and backfiring in their faces. And it all culminates to, again, Christopher, Pooh, and a certain plot element that gets introduced till a sort of a carnage ensues after that. But my thoughts, again, as mentioned previously, we both had fun with the first film. We both, saw its flaws, and obviously this one is definitely has more of a budget. You can see it. They show it on screen. The outfits are better. The makeup is better. Pooh, obviously, the main thing with the first one is the mask left a lot to be desired. But now, where they retcon that, and it's basically a movie within the movie, it kind of makes sense that the film adaptation of what events occurred is going to be on the cheap side, and just like straightforward, what the first film basically was. This one, on the other hand, again, the costumes, look good. The effects, because there's definitely more gore effects in the film, that looked good. Again, it's still on the cheap side, but it looked good for what they're trying to do. And the story is definitely far better in this one than it was in the first film. The first one, again, I think that's one of the main, again, just like slasher tropes to get people to a house and get murdered. Because it's just like sort of nonsense characters, basically, with the girls in the house and drinking and having fun,
Right.
and just happen to be beside the 100-acre wood. And even Christopher Robin is more involved, in this one, and the story's more important than it was in the first one. He's like sort of an afterthought, honestly, with the first Winnie the Pooh film, as the film kept going and going in that film. But this one, again, I think they did a better job in portraying Christopher Robin and the story that eventually unfolds. It makes sense to the story, and to his character arc, and to what, again, as I just said, what eventually occurs. And again, I didn't mind it. Again, I had fun with it. The main thing I think really it takes a while to hit its stride. It just like it's more again, you're getting to know Christopher more, his family, his younger sister, all these sort of sub characters come in every now and then. The hunters in the woods, the guy that survives the woods attacked by Piglet and Pooh, um, and then we're introduced to the subplot that I don't want to give away yet. That involves a certain character and his history with everything. So there's a lot of again small minor things what you have to get introduced first before the eventual payoff. And again, it takes a while, but again, it's not one of those where it's like you're bored. You're just again you're getting the story, you're getting everything as it progresses, and you're interested in seeing where it goes. Even though it's kind of you can see the writing on the wall, but it doesn't really take you out of the film. It's just not with like how Three Blind Mice was, where it's just like nothing made sense to anything, and it
Right.
just like it fell into itself. This one, they give you reasoning for everything. They give you reasoning and backstory and why things are happening, and it takes a while to get there. Whereas again, Three Blind Mice, they didn't know how to do that, and it's just like again yin and yang. Where like one film that we started the marathon did it so poorly. Yeah, here's Blood and Honey 2, and he did it more substantially, and it's almost the exact same film, just a few little minor key things changed around, and it's just like again that helped. I messaged you and said that's definitely helped my rating for when we ranked
Oh yeah.
these. Um, because just to see one just totally flounder and see one actually work and know what they're doing and things make sense, and no random scenes of a mouse man shooting arrows that's supposed to be blind. It's just it doesn't make sense. Um, but this one again, everything worked. I like the look of the characters. Al, he did his, he's sort of here and there. He doesn't do really much, but I like the look of him. I think they did a good job. Um, Even though I think they did Piglet dirty, but I think maybe again they'll do more with the eventual third film and whatever they do with the Pooniverse. But I like what they did with them, even though again they're obviously references and nods to other you know horror villains. I mean, it's too on the nose for a lot of these. Um, but again, you have to. It's a little tongue in cheek, I guess, just to give nods and reference to other films. But it didn't really take me out. I still had a little fun, fun with it here and there. Could they done without it? Yeah, I would think. I think so. Um, but again, Tigger saying bitch here and there, whatever. It's just like you don't get that often. Calling people bitches. Um, so it was okay. Um, but yeah, again, I didn't mind it. Again, it takes a while for it to get going, but that's the story progressing, so it makes sense for the ride to get there for the eventual carnage that ensues towards the end. Um, I do think they had fun with it. Again, all the practical effects and the gore was decent. Um, but Ian, I'll let you give your thoughts, and then we'll go back and forth.
Well, trying to do my best to make it as spoiler free as possible since it is still currently in theaters. Um, I actually enjoyed it. I mean, it's definitely the better film of this little marathon, which is honestly like it's wild to think about that because this movie is exactly like what I thought the other movies would be, or like this would be on the same page as all the others. Um, I think like what you said is correct. Like it I was sitting there thinking about Three Blind Mice while I was watching this, because anamorphic creatures, you know, being like done so much better. Um, I like that they gave us story. Now there was a lot of talking in this movie, like in, you know, Mary Had a Little Lamb, but where Mary Little Had a Little Lamb went wrong was that it was mostly pointless talking. This actually like added to the story instead of just being some random anecdotes that don't really go anywhere, nor do they do anything with it. And I think this movie, um especially compared to the other two in the film, um or of this marathon I should say, but this movie definitely did what the other two movies tried to do, and definitely did it better. um I think that I am surprised of how well these Winnie the Pooh movies are. Like the person, the director really wanted to tell a story, and you could tell like he put everything into it instead of just trying to, they had an idea and just threw darts at the wall. Like they actually wanted to tell a real story instead of just like random stories.
Well, he got a different writer to pen the script, so it kind of makes sense to how they retconned everything.
Yeah. I definitely need to go back and rewatch the Winnie the Pooh movie, the first one, um, and kind of compare them a little bit more, because
Yeah,
I'm really,
the thing is like I think the first Winnie the Pooh, I think it still has some good scenes. I like the pool scene where he's chasing the girl in the pool. I think that was a great looking shot in general. Um, I think again, I think the first film had like interesting shots. This one is just more let's broaden the characters, because like Pooh doesn't talk until the very sort of last couple minutes of the first film. This one, I don't think he really says anything. It's more Al and Tigger,
yeah,
um, but it's more again where the story eventually leads that works with this film and the revelation that ensues um, there.
yeah,
Um, where it's again, I dig what they're going for. Um, and I had fun. They're going more gory. I mean, the effects again. Um, and then of course, I guess like more outlandish things in general because like you do have Pooh with a chainsaw that does catch on fire, and I mean it's more over the top compared to the first one. And I think I said that's what I wanted with the sequel, and I think it delivered. Where I
yeah,
wanted more crazy things that happen with the characters, and again, a fire chainsaw wielding Winnie the Pooh chasing down Christopher Robin. I mean, it's a pretty neat situation to watch. Um, Again, Al, they don't really do much with him, even though he's like sort of like the soothsayer in a sense. Maybe he comes more prominent in the third film because of what eventually happens with some of the
yeah.
characters. Um, and they're supposed to, and again, I read where the third one they're going to introduce the the Hufflumps. That's going to
See,
be
I was
interesting.
actually like, was thinking about that because I haven't really looked too far into this movie series. Mostly, I think I want to be surprised more than anything of what's going to happen. But like, I'm really interested in seeing where this goes, because I honestly was like, okay, this first movie was pretty okay. I know a lot of people hated it, but I was really, interested to see where this was going, but I was also kind of worried because sequels to these kind of movies, especially when the first one is kind of okay, usually fall just completely flat, and this one seemed to, you know, like do the series justice so far. So, hey, maybe the third movie might be like one of the best movies we've ever watched. We could hope.
Yeah, I mean it's up to the eventual, that whole Pooniverse that they're building with like Bambi, Tinkerbell, Peter Pan's in it. I think the Mad Hatter is going to be in it, and there's like little inklings and little Easter eggs throughout this one. There's like when Christopher's reading notes and papers and stuff. There's like zombie deer, and like, well, there's Bambi.
Okay.
So there's
See,
like all kinds of little.
yeah, that's what I'm curious about. Like, is how they're going to do the Bambi and Peter Pan. I can see working. I think the Mad Hatter is going to be just a cringe fest. Just because that's usually anything that involves the Mad Hatter is usually kind of cringy.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm interested to see where they take this because out of all the movies that we have watched that is in this vein, I am actually pleasantly surprised by how well it's been doing. And I don't know, maybe it's just the fact that we watched so many of these kind of movies that just are so terrible that like our idea of what these movies are, and you're like, oh wow, this is actually pretty good. But I'm enjoying it. I didn't hate myself like I did with Three Blind Mice. So
No, definitely not. And again, like you said, like with the marathon, like again, no other. Again, I don't think a lot of people's going to do a marathon of like this, where we do Three Blind Mice, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and Blood and Honey 2. So, like, again, we have this, I wouldn't say experience, but it's like, again, we have the repertoire and the knowledge of like all these other films. And like a lot of people don't do that. It's even how we did with the original Blood and Honey is like we compared it to something like The Mean One, which just squandered itself, and like all these other films where they take these outlandish ideas, like there's Snow Escape, and they squander it, and just like all these crazy films like not the normal person is going to watch and review or spend time on, like maybe they'll watch one or two, here and there during a special time, like there's Snow Escape during Christmas and all that. But here we watch these and we review them and we do marathons. We have this, review knowledge and of what we watch, and we can compare and contrast things to what works and what doesn't. A lot of people don't do that. And again, I'm not put us up higher than anything, because we're not high or anything like that. We're just like we spend a lot of time watching really shitty movies, and a lot of people don't do that. They only watch the stuff coming out in theaters or the more popular stuff, and they don't deep dive into the shit we do. Even the lower budget stuff, like we mentioned, that's just like obscure and like two copies exist. If that, and it's just like we know, again, we see things differently in a different light, and we can appreciate the effort, and especially myself, where I watch a lot more stuff than a normal person should, and even on lower budgets.
right.
And it's just like I have an idea of where things go and just like where things do. And like again, I had fun with it. Again, it still had its issues. I mean, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. But I see, again, where they took the money and used it to better itself. Like they hired a new person to write the script. They retconned the situation of the first movie where it makes sense that the mask looks shoddy, like cheap, because it's a movie within a movie. And again, like other films done that too, and it didn't work out in their favor. Look at Jeepers Creepers Reborn, all right, where it's like, oh, the Jeepers Creepers other movies are actually not a part of this universe. There are movies in the movies within Jeepers Creepers Reborn. This is the actual Jeepers Creepers, like this is the actual creeper, and they just fucking shit on it, basically, with Jeepers Creepers Reborn. And so, like, at least this one, it kind of worked in its favor instead of just shitting on the franchise of a, I wouldn't say beloved, but a fan favorite. The Creeper. People like the Creeper. Not to say that the director, of the original, first three are any good, but still, take away the, artist from the art, and it's still fine. But like it works in its favor to, like, okay, it looks cheap for a reason. Now we're gonna do something and make it its own. Now we're gonna do better. It's like it's actually working upon itself to make itself, again, this franchise. And I think again, Pooh is sort of the silent killer, even though he walks around with a bear trap and attacking people, and like he has his murderous ways, and he is a violent character. And Tigger, I expected a little bit more out of Tigger, being like the more overactive, hyperactive of the characters, but he's sort of like, again, he's the Freddy Krueger of the group, and he does his little nail thing, his claws, and there's like scenes that's straight out of A Nightmare on Elm Street, where, like, again, like the eyeball scene, and then like he has the eyes on the claw blades, and so there's like a obvious nods. But again, that didn't really take me too out of the movie. You have to give him some some kind of character depth, and if you're gonna hearken Pooh as Freddy, not Jason or Michael, and then you have Al as Hellraiser, Pinhead, and then you have Tigger as Freddy, and then Piglet, I don't know, Leatherface, I guess, I don't know. Even though, again, they did him dirty. But I'm interested in, again, as we said with the first Blood and Honey, like, I'm interested in see where this goes and eventually leads, because where the film ends. So I'm assuming, again, like I said, Al has to have some kind of thing that happens to do what it does. And again, I'm interested to see if they do what they should have done in Three Blind Mice and Winnie the Pooh 3, Blood and Honey 3, is where that one they didn't do much, with the mice people attacking them and taking them to their lair. Like, I wonder if that's going to happen in this one. And it's sort of like I hate to say this, but sort of like a House of the Dead situation, where like there's a more potent, like mad scientist, or like he's like, of course I'm thinking of Al as the mad scientist in an underground lair doing stuff to create more beings, because obviously that has to happen. But again, I'm interested in to see where it goes, and again, the Pooniverse, when it comes out in a couple years, and all the sort of cabin in the woods hijinks at the end of that film is going to happen in this one, where it's just like Disney properties killing people. It's going to be a sight to behold. You got any final thoughts, Ian?
Honestly, like, just thinking of all the the Disney properties attacking people now. But I'm glad that this movie came out. Because like the Mickey Mouse, the Steamboat Willie thing, the mean one, all of that stuff, I feel like I've enjoyed the Winnie the Pooh movies more than I enjoyed those other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, I don't know, like, I'm glad that I can get into something like this. Like, it's what I've always wanted, just something off the walls that has a nice little story that, doesn't have something stupid to take us out of the film, and just like turn your brain off and watch something fun for a while. and something that doesn't try to take itself too seriously. It doesn't like just take what it has and squanders it like like the other two movies did. And like Mary Had a Little Lamb had such great potential, and I felt like, out of all the movies, I felt like that was probably the weakest story wise, because at least, Three Blind Mice had something interesting. Mary Had a Little Lamb had a great premise. There was like, you know, um, I felt like they could have leaned more into like a lesson, like the women who basically treat their sons as a pseudo boyfriend. I was like, that right there is in there. Having Putting yourself at risk just to get viewers was another good one that they could have leaned a little harder into. They didn't need all the characters. Uh, I felt like the ending of Mary Had a Little Lamb was undeserved, because it was like
Mhm.
there was just no build up. Like they spent the whole movie talking, and I just felt like they screwed themselves over by putting too many characters in it. And I just was thinking about this, like this whole, like the marathon and the past, since last week. And I feel like what those movies failed to do was like really just capture what it was trying to do. And that's what I feel like, this Winnie the Pooh did. And and as I say it, I'm like laughing because of the fact that, I'm saying Winnie the Pooh, and looking at the poster for it, just like this is not what I was expecting. If I were to see this movie like that poster in like in a Walmart $5 bin, I probably would just roll my eyes and laugh at how ridiculous it is. Not look, watching it and being like, oh, this is actually fairly decent. Um, and that's another thing I was thinking about, was like how I would have passed this movie up if it wasn't for our show. And we torture ourselves sometimes so other people might not have to.
Mhm.
But like I'm just like, just dumbfounded a little bit by how much I actually enjoyed this movie. Like I didn't think it was like the greatest movie of the year, but like I was like, this was pleasantly a very enjoyable watch. And yeah, I don't really have much more to say other than that. But like, I was just thinking about like all the movies that we've watched lately, and just especially like properties of other companies. And it's just how they just dropped the ball when it came to a lot of the storytelling, and half the storytelling is right there. It's just, you know, they want to try
Yeah.
to do something more, or they want to like, hey, let's just do this. This sounds cool, without stopping to think, yes, it might be cool, but does it make sense?
No,
So,
I think that's the main thing with this marathon in general is like again these outlandish ideas of nursery rhymes, right? That's the whole
yeah,
reason. And Three Blind Mice. I mean, I'm going to go through them here, like you mentioned. Um, they had an again, they had an idea, but they didn't know where they wanted to take it, and then they just like it caved in on itself as the film progressed because they didn't know they had all these ideas and they just didn't go down any path, you know,
yeah,
and they didn't go any further with any of them. They went back and like, well, this path doesn't work. Let's go back here and do this path, and let's go back here and do this path. And they didn't follow through with anything that was set up, and that and just like they didn't know where they wanted to do does the mice see? Do they not see? Are they able to do this? Like, what is going? You know, like, do they have some kind of sensory powers? No, they don't. They're able to shoot arrows. They can't see a person 2 inches from their face and smell them. But they're able to hear a pin drop and attack someone climbing up a ladder. It doesn't make sense, and it just caves in on itself, as we mentioned in that review. Mary Had a Little Lamb. Again, another one where it's just like the story was there. It's been done. It's been done better, but like the reveal of certain elements made that one where like, well, you could have done so much more, and like actually made the lamb more menacing. Like whereas Winnie the Pooh, like again the ending was just like it was all over the place where they didn't know exactly where they wanted to go with it.
Yeah.
With Mary Had a Little Lamb, they just like we have this cool outfit and this lamb mask that looks like he's giving a der face half the time. Sounds like that Which Way Did He Go, George from Looney Tunes, when he's like coming up the steps and walking down the hallway, had that tongue sticking out of his mouth look. But nonetheless, like, and then you have Winnie the Pooh, which does Three Blind Mice better, and then has more of a integral story about grieving and family and loss and all that. So it does both. Blood and Honey 2 does both films of Three Blind Mice and Mary Had a Little Lamb better in one. So again, with that said, again, your best bet is to not watch the first two and just watch Blood and Honey 2. I mean, because you technically get both films in Blood and Honey 2.
Exactly. And that's what I was sitting there. I was sitting there, talking to my mom about it because she was asking me about the movies I've watched. And I was just telling her, I was like, there's all of this story elements that both movies could have really like did, instead of just like talking and bringing, the first, Three Blind Mice. We got it that she is a drug addict. She likes her drug dealer. It didn't need to be brought up every 5 seconds. There was like a lot more that could have been brought up story-wise. And honestly, I felt like that movie could have made a little bit more sense if they just would have added like scientists who are trying to like capture them and bring them back in, and
there
trying
needed
to
be
kill off
something.
people.
There
Yeah.
needed to be something. And then in Mary Had a Little Lamb, there needed to be less characters and make it more concise.
My God. Yeah.
Because there's too many characters. It was just nobody's. Just like, again, we mentioned that in that review. And then this one, again, it's very specific in what it wanted. You're introduced to a handful of characters. They don't get brought up because the central story is Christopher Robin. And what eventually happens with the reveal of learning things about what happened during his childhood at the party and all that leading up. It's a slow build. And then finally you get the big payoff of carnage at the end with Pooh and Tigger going crazy and murdering people. And it's a slow build with, it is talky, but it's supposed to be that way. Whereas like Mary Had a Little Lamb was just like nothing. Three Blind Mice, nothing. It's all superfluous. At least it was integral to the story being told in Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Again, we're deep diving into this, like not a lot of people won't. And we're comparing it to other things, but it makes sense to like why it's slow progress to where it eventually leads and to what's eventually to come. And it makes sense to the story. And again, it's not the most, hype. As compared to the first one. I mean, where like the characters in the first one are just superfluous fodder to get sliced and diced, and it was the reasoning behind that. I mean, of course, now you look back on it and it's retcon. It makes sense. It's like, okay, it's in its own universe, basically. But the whole thing of like, it takes a while for that to get the people to the house. MacGuffin gets someone to the house, and then Pooh and Piglet go on a murder spree. I mean, it's not the most over the top murder spree, but it's a murder spree, and it's sufficient in seeing Pooh and Piglet kill people. I mean, and this one again, it's that slow progress and the story being built around Christopher Robin, his brother, his family, and everything like that. And you just get little hints here and there of other people, and it doesn't take anything out of the film. Whereas like, oh, we're introduced to this person that doesn't need to, it's like a friend. It's not like the couple in Mary Had a Little Lamb that's just there to have sex on the couch and oh, here we are. Like, what? Who are you? Who are you to the plot of the story? Why? Who are
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
in general? This one is just like it's Christopher Robin's story. You get a little bit of his sister in there because his sister's sort of a central part of him caring, of course, his family and the what happened. The past coming back to fruition. And again, things being revealed as the film progresses, and it makes sense. It's like it makes sense to what happens with the story. The janitor in the hospital and his intake of what happened to compared to like not having that character in Three Blind Mice that needed to be there. It's just like everything works in this one, and it makes sense to the story being told. Whereas, like again, those things are missing from the previous two films.
Yeah. And that's what I was been thinking about. It's just like, comparing all these movies together, trying to like, think of like a wrap up of how to like in this marathon and like compare like what we've watched, since they're all like in the same vein of like these were children's stories turned into horror movies. And I, I don't say this is the worst one out of all the things we've watched. Now, I do think Three Blind Mice, that was the first time in a while I've actually been that angry at a movie. Um, like, but other than that, like, this has been a pretty decent marathon. And, and I'm glad, usually, like, we always have one good one and then like the rest are crap. And I'm glad like that we actually got to end it on a good note.
Yeah,
So
I mean, like I said, each one has had its ups and downs with the reviews, and of course, breaking it down and really delving into everything. But again, I didn't really mind Blood and Honey 2 compared. I don't think there's too much problems as Mice and Lamb had, because those were just again, especially Blind Mice, that was too glaring and too obvious of just like so many issues, and we really
exactly, yes.
we just had to. There's no reason for that to be that way. And then Mary Had a Little Lamb. It was just again, we mentioned it just previously, like too many characters that serve no purpose. Make it shorter, concise, get to the point faster, make the lamb more menacing. You had a good central idea of Mary and what in her story, but you just kind of again it was there. They just didn't push, go through all the way. It's like,
Yeah.
um, and this one, like again, everything it meshes where it makes sense to the story, and like there's a reasoning for the slow build up and the slow pace at the beginning because you're getting reintroduced to Christopher Robin. That's a different Christopher Robin compared to the first film, so you have to again get the new backstory, get the new lore, because the first film is not it's not canon. It's a movie in the film universe now. So but you still have to kind of compare and contrast the first film with the second film because it is first film second film, and still take away like again it's the same director, but just we have to do what we have to do when discussing this stuff, and we really deep dive into these films and bring a lot of stuff up that most people don't. But again, if we're doing, we usually end this, Ian, with our rankings, and obviously, I think we're both putting Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2, number one. And again, last week, during Mary Had a Little Lamb, I was contemplating where it was going to land, but after Blood and Honey 2, Mary Had a Little Lamb is second, Three Blind Mice, because Winnie the Pooh 2 managed to take the story of Three Blind Mice and do it better. So Three Blind Mice, where it doesn't engulf itself in flames and burn to death, as Three Blind Mice did. I guess we're on the same page, but you can tell me otherwise.
Oh no, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, at least with Mary Had a Little Lamb, like I didn't hate myself after watching it. Like just getting so angry that I was like, I wish that I didn't see this. Now, but Mary Had a Little Lamb, it had its major flaws, but like I felt like they at least, with Mary, it made sense, like why she was doing what she did. But like you said, I wish they would have went a little bit more into the son. And like I get it, he was supposed to be like this dark, mysterious character, but I didn't feel that. I honestly felt like he was ignored most of the movie and just like hinted at that he was coming to get you. And I don't know, I just that's where I placed that as number 2. And obviously, yeah, Winnie the Pooh is going to be number 1. And Three Blind Mice is falling to 3.
Yeah. If where it belongs, 3 in the title. But yeah, it's like, again, like Three Blind Mice is just gonna be like, the only thing we're gonna remember is that fucking rat shooting an arrow at people, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
gonna be
really
like
it.
the Leprechaun's game, where the only thing I'm gonna remember is that fucking leprechaun coming down the chairlift at the end of it, and it's like, oh, remember that? Like, yep. And but at least, again, with Leprechaun's game, again, we bring that up a lot, but like, at least, the first one, at least, we kind of had fun with it being so bad, and of course, like the second one was just a monstrosity of society, where it's just like everything was just wrong. It's like another one is like in the Three Blind Mice category, where like it's just like everything was wrong. It's like they didn't know what they're doing, and of course, quarantine happened with that Leprechaun's Curse. But yeah, the Three Blind Mice is definitely just like everything was just like wrong. Like you didn't know what you were doing with this one. That's how it felt with Leprechaun's Curse. And again, we discussed Mary. It's a perfectly fine little tiny slasher. It just too many characters are introduced for no reason that didn't need to be there. And it just didn't really know where it wanted to go with the lamb. If it's supposed to be this menacing character with an axe or a sledgehammer going around, he just walks around the house doing nothing. Like what you wanted him to be is what you get with Pooh in Winnie the
Yeah.
Pooh. Where it's just like this menacing presence going around attacking people. So you get the best of both worlds in Blood and Honey 2. So you don't have to watch Mary Had a Little Lamb and Three Blind Mice, because it takes, again, nice and wrapped up little bow, just in various ways. But again, it's just weird how things pan out with like this marathon, like how everything that we talked about is just like wrapped up in a tight little bow in Blood and Honey 2. Like you wanted a menacing character with the lamb, here it is in Winnie the Pooh. You wanted creatures created, here it is in Blood and Honey 2. So it makes,
Yeah, exactly.
it's weird, but again, it's just like, again, no one does this. Like, how else is anybody going to know unless we do these like little mini marathons? Of course, the year of the marathon was crazy for this, where we talked about all these films over the course of a month, and it's been good to redo
Yeah.
that and just to go into these films again. No one's gonna do this for these fucking films that deep dive into shit. But I think we do a good service for those interested in wanting to check the films out. Of course, they'll have to listen to our reviews all the way until they get to here. Maybe they'll just skip to this one because it's more well known. But again, if you have any interest in those other two films, you get both in Blood and Honey too. So in a sense, we kind of saved you 3 hours.
And I want to also say, like, I have, like, out of all the times that we have done marathons like this, I have not seen a movie that not only did this movie do the other two movies better, but like it actually like had, it solved the problems that we had with the, the previous films. And I thought that was a nice, like, I was like, this is our, final of this little mini marathon. And here we are, like talking about, hey, this movie, like, this is an actual like representation of what the other two movies could be. And you're just like, I'm just sitting here, it's just like, man, this is crazy because like this fits so perfectly. Like, I don't know, it just seemed like it was a nice little, it really was like a perfect ending to this. And if you want to watch like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 1 and 2, I say watch Three Blind Mice and Mary Had a Little Lamb to get an idea of what we are talking about. So you can see how like wildly different, and you might actually get a better opinion of the Winnie the Pooh movie.
Yeah, because I
Because
think a lot of people just go into this like, oh my god, Winnie the Pooh, it's terrible. And like, again, we did these other two films that like took this again, it's just like floundered their ideas, and like Winnie the Pooh 2 comes along and just does their ideas better. And it's like it's crazy, as you said, it's just like it's wild because like again, like no other normal talk show, discussing horror films are going to do a marathon like this. Very few anyway. I mean, I'm not to say they're not. I mean, it's an interesting premise for a nurse, for a marathon, and just to see how
I think I lost you for, but yeah. Let's see. Yes, you're not. I don't know if it's picking up on the recording. Yeah, here we go. I lost. You are lost. Well, I guess I'll be the one to end this. Thank you all for listening to our review of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. And that'll do it for tonight. Thank you all for listening, and hopefully we'll have something equally as fun in store next week. Stay tuned.